In a quiet house in the countryside, a geologist named Abby is spending time with her older sister Beth. They recently lost their mother, so both are trying to support each other through the grief. Then another tragedy hits when Beth is diagnosed with late-stage leukemia. Doctors refuse to take her case since there is nothing they can do. Abby refuses to give up and discovers a foreign clinic that offers treatments that are less ethical. To send Beth there, Abby needs money, so she accepts a dangerous job. Sometime later, Abby arrives in the Georgian Caucasus near the border with Russia. She has been hired by a private metal mining company to search for uranium. Her father does not approve because he believes Abby deserves a better career than being used by a company, but Abby is too desperate to save her sister. She even asks her boss for advance payment, but he refuses since she must first find something. Abby and her coworker Sergey spend long hours searching for uranium without success. They are supposed to stay within specific areas, but Abby decides to continue the search in the forest. Sergey warns her it could be dangerous, so Abby takes his gun and tells him to leave her behind. The forest is filled with eerie noises that make Abby uneasy at first. She later calms down when she discovers a strange black rock. Back at headquarters, Abby runs several tests and notices the rock has a very high temperature, yet she cannot identify it. Her excitement is cut short when her father calls and tells her he is taking Beth out of the clinic to let her die peacefully at home. Abby strongly disagrees and says she will return to handle everything. At that moment, the building shakes and the lights flicker. When it settles, Abby gathers her things and asks Sergey to drive her to the airport. She takes a helicopter home and chats with the pilots, who mention they will fly near the border to remind the Russians who controls the valley. After a few hours in the air, Abby is surprised to see birds flying at such a high altitude, but when the helicopter changes direction, she realizes those shapes are not birds at all. It is a dark shadow that crackles with strange noise. The pilot says it is getting closer before the chopper starts shaking and the black mass surrounds the windows, then drifts away. Right after that, the helicopter systems fail, including the radio. They need to land right away, but the engine cuts out too. Abby straps on her seatbelt as the chopper loses speed and altitude, making it hard to breathe. She focuses on her breathing and thinks of her sister, then closes her eyes so she will not see the crash in the mountains.
While unconscious, Abby dreams of telling her father not to make any drastic choices while she is gone, and promises she will return soon. She eventually awakes bleeding inside the wreckage and sees part of the helicopter burning. One of the pilots is already dead. Abby checks on the other man and wraps his wound, telling him to keep pressure on it. She goes outside to yell for help, but nobody answers. When she returns, the pilot explains how to use the emergency radio, yet no matter how many times she tries, no one responds. Abby checks a map and realizes the nearest road is 60,000 kilometers south. She decides to smash open some boxes and build a large fire, hoping someone will spot it. By the next morning, the second pilot has also died. Abby breaks down crying in panic as she realizes she is stranded alone in the wilderness. Later, when she tries to sleep inside the wreckage, she dreams of Beth's fragile state, which wakes her up again. She goes out to warm herself, but the fire has burned out. Refusing to surrender, Abby gathers everything useful from the helicopter, including a gun and a flare. She puts on extra layers of clothing and uses a compass to head toward the southern road. As soon as she moves away from the crash site, she hears radio static. She runs back, but the helicopter systems are dead. Hearing the static again, she discovers it comes from a radio clipped to the pilot's belt. Sadly, the battery dies as she tries to use it, so she grabs the helicopter manual to figure out where the chargers are. She leaves the radio to recharge, and while she waits, she keeps staring at this strange black rock. Eventually, the radio powers up again, and Abby reaches an American pilot named John, whose plane also went down in the same area. John's legs are trapped and he cannot move. His antenna is also broken. Abby realizes she can repair the antenna to call for help and asks where he is. John explains he can see a lake. After finding the lake on the map, Abby begins a new journey to reach him. John warns her not to do it because the area is dangerous and occupied, but she ignores him. As she walks, John keeps her company and asks about her job. While climbing a hill, Abby explains that the money is for her sister. She has to stop for a moment to collect herself when her emotions overwhelm her. John then mentions mentions that rare 1 in a million chance, which gives Abby enough hope to continue. As she climbs, she remembers Beth telling her once that there was nothing left to fight for and that she should move on. Abby tells John that nobody is fighting for Beth, and John replies that she is lucky to have such a supportive sister. Abby eventually climbs to a point so steep she cannot go higher, which forces her to change direction. She does not notice the black rocks close by. In the new path, Abby manages to climb over the hill and reach the forest, where she decides to rest for the night. John tells her he feels no pain anymore since he cannot feel his lower body. Abby builds a fire and makes a small shelter with sticks, but the rain puts the fire out. Then she feels something warm in her bag and remembers the rock. She takes it out and touches it with her bare hand, noticing how the surface reacts in strange ways. John tells her she should not be ashamed of her work. Abby realizes he must be military and is speaking from his own experience. When morning comes, Abby resumes her journey and enters a valley covered in snow. The wind makes her colder and she keeps stumbling. She eventually finds a river where she rests and refills her bottle. Hours later, she sees another mountain range blocking the way. The map shows no easier path, so she must start climbing. She pushes forward as much as she can, but when she finally tries climbing, she slips off almost instantly. John tells her to turn back because she cannot save everyone. Abby breaks down in anger, saying she is tired of everyone telling her to stop. What she wants right now are words of encouragement. John hesitates, but finally says it is her choice and wishes her luck. Abby removes her gloves and starts climbing again. Without the gloves, she gets a better grip and begins to make progress. She climbs for a long stretch until reaching a section where her feet cannot find a hold. When she tells John this, he replies it is a shame because she was one of his favorites, then cuts the line. Abby is left confused as she tries to contact him again with no success. She takes out a tool and pushes it into the rock, but it slips out when she steps on it. Abby takes a moment to breathe deeply and think. This makes her remember the strange black rock. She also recalls the doctor telling her there is no such thing as miracles. Yet a miracle is happening now because just moving her hand makes the rock change shape. She ties a thread to the rock, pushes it into the mountain wall, and uses it for support. With its help, she steps safely and finally climbs to the top. The thread tugs the rock free as she stands, bringing it back with her. At that moment, she spots the mysterious shadow flying across the sky, making its crackling sound. Abby uses binoculars and sees lights far away, belonging to a military base. She gathers sticks and grass to build a fire, hoping someone will notice. She also arranges rocks into an arrow to show the direction she is heading. Hours later, John contacts her on the radio and tells her to stop signaling. He warns that Russians control this territory, so if they see the fire, they will come to kill her, not to save her. This frightens Abby, and she slips down a rocky slope, injuring her leg. Frustrated with John's scolding, she turns off the radio and treats her wound. Right then, she hears radio static and notices a soldier patrolling nearby. Abby quickly runs away. The injury and the heavy snow make it hard to move, so she uses a stick to help her walk. After crossing the forest, she discovers old abandoned buildings and decides to hide inside and rest. The place is full of broken belongings and photos left behind by families killed during the Russian invasion. After searching each room and every drawer, she finds enough items to start a fire and even some moldy bread that makes her gag. Using the first aid kit from the wreck, Abby wraps her hands and injects expired medicine into her stomach. Before she falls asleep, she looks at Beth's picture and thinks about the pain her sister must be in. That night, Abby dreams of the good times with Beth, but also of her days in the hospital. Beth was tired of the clinic and wanted to spend her last days at home with family, yet Abby forced her to stay. Before Abby left for the mining job, Beth told her she was not doing this for her, but for herself. The next morning, Abby wakes up to the sound of a radio. She looks outside and spots a soldier coming closer, which makes her panic. She rushes to block the door, then hides under the window while covering her mouth. The soldier peeks inside, but does not see her and moves on. As he checks the other windows, Abby uses a stick to pull her bag closer and takes out the gun, but the magazine slips out. The noise alerts the soldier and he tries to break in. While he looks for another way inside, Abby prepares the weapon. Soon the soldier finds her and points his gun while speaking in Russian. Abby panics and fires. Her shot hits his weapon and then his leg, bringing him down. She takes his rifle and backpack while he keeps repeating the name Ivan. Abby lowers her gun to show she means no harm, then opens the bag and finds a flashlight, some cigarettes, and a black rock just like hers. At that moment, John's voice comes from the soldier's radio saying, "You were one of my favorites." The soldier confirms his name is Ivan. Abby realizes they were both tricked. The voice then asks, "Do you want to see Beth again?" before cutting off.
Abby apologizes to the soldier and bandages his wound, then sets him on the couch. She tells him she will go search for the voice on the radio and asks him to tell his superiors not to shoot her if they spot her, but she is unsure how much he understands. The two of them leave together, both limping through the forest with their injured legs. When they stop to rest, Abby takes out the rock and hears the crackling sound in the sky. She realizes the rock is what attracted the shadow that destroyed the helicopter and has been disrupting the radio signals. That is why the radio in the helicopter worked again after Abby walked away. Furious, she throws the rock aside and screams in frustration. She and the soldier then begin crossing a wide valley of snow. With each step, the snow shifts, and they realize they are walking over ice. It is the lake John had mentioned. Abby keeps her distance from the soldier so their weight does not break the surface. Suddenly, the crackling noise returns. When Abby turns around, the soldier is gone. She looks for him, but the ice breaks under her own feet and she falls through. With great effort, she manages to hold the edge and drag herself out of the freezing water. The wind grows stronger until she can barely see. She keeps shouting for help while forcing herself to move forward. At last, she reaches the edge of the forest and spots a cigarette the soldier dropped earlier. Too exhausted to continue, she takes off her soaked clothes and crawls into a sleeping bag, hoping to regain warmth. At that moment, John's voice comes through the radio again, saying the same thing once happened to him. Angry, Abby hurls the radio away, but his voice still echoes with the story. He explains that after his plane went down, he watched his crew die one by one. His own heartbeat slowed and he thought his time had come too, but at the last second, he found deliverance. Abby drifts into sleep and dreams once more of her happy moments with Beth. She wakes when the sound of a helicopter cuts through the sky. She runs through the forest waving to get their attention, but the pilots do not see her and fly off. The cold begins to overwhelm her until she drops to her knees, hearing Beth's voice telling her to go home. She collapses and falls through an opening that turns out to be a cave. Abby's body rolls down the hard stone and plunges into a pool of water. Floating beside her is John's decayed corpse, covered with fragments of the black rock. At the bottom of the pool, the same black substance stirs and rises as if trying to enter her body.
It seems this rock is some kind of identity, using real voices to lure Abby and the soldier, the same way it trapped John. When Abby wakes, she's on solid ground. Rocks float around her as the entity speaks with John's voice, congratulating her for making it and saying it feared she would end up like the others. Abby accuses it of causing the crashes and demands to know why it brought her here. The voice replies that every choice was her own. The floating rocks then form half a human body as the voice explains that John survived by agreeing to become its occupant. Now the same offer is given to Abby. She turns it down, saying she only wants to go home. The voice replies that she's already home as Beth's house appears before her. An invisible force pushes her inside, where piles of black rocks fill every room. The entity tells her she fears death and is desperate to beat it, and that she can if she surrenders. Abby tries to escape through the rooms until she suddenly finds Beth outside. Beth takes her hand. Abby wakes in her sister's home where Beth looks perfectly healthy. The crackling sound lingers in the background as Abby hugs her sister and cries. But then she sees flashes of the hospital and realizes it is all an illusion from the entity. She accepts she must let her sister go. Abby apologizes to Beth for pushing her too far and says her final goodbye. As she heads to leave the house, the radio speaks again with the entity's voice, begging her to stay since it can give her everything she wants. Abby refuses, saying she has learned her lesson. Without death, there is no life. Beth also begs her not to leave, but Abby opens the door and walks out into the snowstorm screaming for help. At that moment, she wakes inside the sleeping bag. She remembers the flare and quickly lights it. The helicopter returns and rescues her. Abby spends 2 days in the hospital recovering. When she wakes again, she's in an apartment with Sergey and his grandmother. Sergey tells her to rest, but she insists on going home, so he drives her to the airport. Later, Abby and her father visit Beth, who is now bedridden and cared for by a nurse. Knowing Beth has little time left, Abby and her father step outside to cry where she cannot see them. That evening, the nurse says it is time. Abby and her father sit beside Beth and comfort her as she dies. If you enjoyed this movie, make sure to subscribe for more amazing recaps.